who cares? Like, who is still struggling over this crap? I mean, are we not past this? Like... So, I thought I'd shoot a quick little video talking about some of the issues that have been really kind of on my mind lately. I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing. Like, I always, on my channel, I've always steered away from talking about politics or getting into political issues because I really don't, that's not really the focus of my work, right? I don't know, I see politics as being this frivolous kind of coming and going of popular ideas. It really doesn't anchor itself to anything lasting or what I would see as truly meaningful in most cases. It's usually populist trends, right? The truly meaningful political movements are usually not very popular because they're too threatening. I think about, like the civil rights movement in the early 1960s, where you could literally be killed. That's a legitimate political movement. People, but they're not popular, right? Because it's too scary. Nobody wants to get involved. As soon as a political movement's super popular, what that means is it's become relatively safe to harbor those views. And if that's true, then odds are it's not really that meaningful anymore. And it succumbs to popular trends in media, and that's part of the reason I just stay away from it. But in this video, I wanted to address some issues that have, become kind of pertinent for me and my family. And I just wanted to give my perspective as, a person in a mixed relationship. I mean, my wife is Sudanese, my kids are, mixed race. It's just sort of a weird thing. And I guess that kind of puts things, directly into a segue for me because, according to most people, my kids would be black, which is weird to me, right? They're mixed. I mean, they're black and they're whites. But, there's this thing where it's like, if you're not pure white, then you default to being black or you default to being some other race. So that, whiteness is becoming like this, this little group of, decreasing size, like, I think, it's just so weird how, I have to admit, like I said, I've always steered away from, affiliating myself with any political viewpoint. I mean, if I was living in the United States, I can tell you I would not have voted for Trump myself, just based on the fact that he just seemed like kind of a bonehead. Over the past year or so, I found myself thinking in increasingly right-wing ways. Because I think that something has really been lost in left-wing politics, and it boils down to just common sense and decent ethics. Growing up when I was a kid in the 90s, it always seemed to me that, these left-wing kind of civil rights ideas focused on live and let live, right? Where it was like, if you're black, if you're white, if you're Jewish or Christian or Muslim or Hindu or whatever you are, gay, straight, whatever, you should be able to live in peace and not be harassed or persecuted or, and that would just seem like such a, a fundamental ethic. As a kid, I'm like, well, yeah, it almost feels like it doesn't have to be said. Like, we really have to say this out loud? Is this not obvious? Like, we're all just people trying to get on in this world. Why are we hating one another for such arbitrary reasons, right? I mean, nobody really knows all the answers, so why are we killing one another just because we disagree, But it seems to me that what I see on the left really worries me, and it worries my wife, and I think I worry, we worry for the future of our kids, what kind of a world they're going to inherit, because, I see some of this rhetoric on the left, like things like, if you're not anti-racist, then you're racist, which, is really ridiculous. Like, it's really stupid. It seems to me that a lot of left-wing politics is falling in rank with basically justifying the very kinds of hatred and anger and violence that was once demonized by that very group. You know, I don't care how you want to label it. You know, if you're gonna put a label on someone and then justify hating them and justify violence against them, I don't care what label you're using. You're doing the same thing as the racist. That's what racists did. They put labels on people. Bigots put labels on people, and they use that label to justify violence and hate. Now, if you're labeling people as racists, you're labeling people as bigots, you're labeling people, whatever you're labeling them as, guess what? You're the new racist. Right? You're doing what they did, right? Labeling people and judging them and putting them into groups, which, you know, gender politics and this whole identity politics, that's exactly what they're doing. Like, you're not an individual anymore. You're a member of your community. You know, you're just a member of this group, and your values are automatically the same as that whole group. You know, it's just like it just seems to me that it's really out of touch with reality. It's really out of touch with what's really going on out there. I mean, I grew up in Canada, and we don't have a lot of the issues that you guys have down in the States. You know, racism's it's not as big of an issue here in Canada as it is down in the US. So, you know, I grew up, I mean, I had gay friends, I had friends of all different kinds of varieties, you know, different races, different religions. It's never really been an issue, you know, for me, and I don't think it has for them. I mean, my wife, you know, she came to Canada in, what was it, 2012 or 2000? I can't remember now, but it was quite a while ago. It was like 10 years ago. And, you know, we've talked about it, like, you know, if she's experienced any kind of racism or any kind of bigotry or persecution, you know, but not really. Like, we've had some rude comments, you know, like people, I don't know, I say rude, but it's like, they're mostly just stupid, right? You know, like I always, you know, we talked about it in one video where it's like people, you know, might have asked me, you know, as if she was a mail order bride, right? Like I'd gotten her from Africa or something, you know, they asked, they're like, how did you meet? And I'm like, at a wedding, you know, and they're like, oh, like a wedding in Africa? And I'm like, no, like a wedding here. You know, they just assume that, I don't know, that I brought her here, and it's like, no, we met normally, like, I don't know, but again, that's not like people, you know, I hear these leftists, you know, and they're like, oh, that's a microaggression. No, give me a break, right? It's just that, you know, people are stupid, right? And, you know, they say stupid things without thinking, you know, they make assumptions. And I mean, that doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means they're, you know, they're stupid. You know, and that, I mean, I think we're all probably guilty of saying something like that at least once in our lives. I mean, you know, I have to admit, even when I first started dating my wife, you know, I kept telling her and I kept complimenting her, you know, on her hair. I was like, oh, you have such beautiful hair. You know, of course, I had no idea black women wear wigs. Like, I had no idea that was even a thing, right? Like, I was just totally, you know, and she kept getting more awkward about it. And I'm like, I don't know why you're so awkward. Like, what do you mean? I'm just complimenting your hair, right? I couldn't figure it out. And then finally she admitted to me, you know, yeah, it's a wig. And I'm like, oh, okay, that would explain it, right? As a person in a mixed relationship, as somebody who, you know, really teaches and advocates for diversity, I mean, my whole YouTube channel is all about, you know, representing religions of different, you know, different cultures. I mean, I love to study Hinduism, Buddhism. You know, I spend a great deal of time down here at, you know, the Sundance with First Nations communities. You know, I like, you know, I've got a front row seat on diversity. I mean, my wife is black. I've got First Nations friends. You know, I study religions from far-flung parts of the world. I was an active member of a Buddhist organization, you know, where we were like basically meditating and visualizing people from Asia, you know, like, I don't know if you could, you know, as a white person, I mean, I'm pretty, I don't know, I'm pretty involved. I mean, I cook Indian food all the time. Like, I love worldly cultures. You could not pigeonhole me as being like a racist and a, you know, but this is the thing. And this is what I think is so important, one of the reasons I don't talk about these things is because, frankly, I don't give a shit, right? I really don't give a shit. I think, who cares? Like, who is still struggling over this crap? I mean, are we not past this? Like, and that's my point. And I feel like that's part of the reason I wanted to make this video. The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love and hate is apathy. You can love and hate someone all at the same time. And surprisingly, those emotions are very intermingled. And so when you talk about these leftists who hate racists, you're becoming like them. You're actually acquiring attributes that are very similar to a racist. You hate people, you label people, you put people in groups, you don't see individuals anymore. You're not okay with live and let live. Everybody has to agree with you. Everybody has to think the way you think. And if they don't think like you, then they're an asshole and you're going to hate them. You're a racist. That's what a racist is. You're hating people for arbitrary reasons. You're justifying violence. That's a racist. I don't care what label you put on it. I don't care what justification you concoct. Oh, I hate these people because they're rah, 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 rah. Whatever. You hate people. You're a hater, right? You're filled with anger and hatred and violence. Ta-da! Right? You're the problem in the world. You're part of the issue. And that's kind of my concern right now as the father of kids who are quote unquote black, right? I really don't want my kids to get sucked up into this crap. As they get older, I'm going to tell them, don't listen to these people who pretend to be your friend, just because they say you're black. Don't listen to them. Don't listen to these people who pretend to support you just because of your race. There's a new form of racism and sexism that's emerging in the world. It's like you can get a job now, not because you're qualified, not because you're the best person for that job, not because, you've done what was necessary to earn that position. No, you're getting hired because you're black or you're gay or you're a woman. Frankly, that's wrong. And to me, this is, anti-racism is not the opposite of racism. It's a new form of it, right? Anti-sexism is not contradicting sexism. It's a new form of sexism, right? The true solution to sexism and racism and all of this crap is apathy. People need to stop giving a shit, right? And that's what's so weird, because if we don't stop, putting ourselves in these groups and slapping labels on it, then all the blacks are going to get together and all the women are going to get together. And that's what's happening. And then they're going to impose their will, and then they're going to persecute people of the opposite class, so that now you have, white people who are suffering because of the persecution of blacks. And, if they say, yeah, well, we're getting even. Well, that's revenge. That's vengeance. And congratulations, that's a new form of evil, right? You're not going to, you're going to, persecute and kill and make these innocent people suffer because of what their ancestors did? Really? Is that really not a new form of wickedness? It is. I mean, it is. It's obvious to me, anyway, that, a lot of these issues that are coming up and a lot of the ways that people are acting politically, it's just a new form of racism. And I really, as a father to two kids who would be classed as black, and again, I really take issue with that because they're as black as they are white. Like, why is it, it's almost like people want to default, right? And to me, that's like, that shows the underlying toxicity of this view. The child is equally white and black, right? And black and white should be considered equal. Right? We're not better or worse or, and one of the things too that really bothers me is, that comes out of this is people all of a sudden have got a phobia of diversity, where it's like, they talk about embracing your differences, but, nobody wants to talk about those differences. All of a sudden it's politically incorrect. You approach things from that angle and it makes people very uncomfortable because they don't want to discuss these differences, right? They don't want to discuss these differences in values. It's just a weird thing because, like growing up in Rocky Mountain House, I mean, I noted that there was a difference between me and the native kids. They were different. Like, they had balls. You know? I remember, you know, I had these two native friends growing up, and they would come to my house holding bees in their hands. Like, you know, I remember this kid, Jesse, used to have like bee stings all over his face. He was just fearless, man. I was so scared of bees when I was a kid. And just by default, this kid was just fearless, you know? And I just don't get it. I just don't understand why saying things like that is all of a sudden racist or like threatening. It's like, if there was ever a war, I would want those people on my side. I'd be like, call Jesse, you know, get that guy in here. Man, that guy's got balls. Like, you know, it's all contextual, where it's like, you know, we hate to talk about the things that make us different. You know, we hate to address that, you know, oh, well, this, you know, this one stereotype might have a statistical justification that maybe people, like, for instance, black people are better at sports. They are, right? Look at basketball teams. Look at flipping football teams, right? Europeans just did not evolve with the same kind of athleticism as people from Africa. And if I'm going to bet on a team, I'll bet on the black team. Like, I want to put my money there. I'm not going to bet on the white guys. Are you kidding me? You know, if maybe, I don't know, if it was like a building project, I don't know, maybe I'd bet on the white guys. They might have them, you know, because we see a lot of engineers, but again, there are always exceptions. You're always going to have a white guy who's great at basketball and an Asian guy who sucks at math and a native guy who's scared of everything. I mean, it's, you know, it's like, and that's okay. I don't understand why we've all of a sudden got so scared of celebrating our differences. As a kid growing up, that's what I thought it was all about. Celebrating our differences, laughing about them, right? Like, I think of comedians like Dave Chappelle, you know, where it was like, you know, it was fun. It's funny, right? Stereotypes should be funny. You know, I'll give you a story about my wife, you know, that I love to share. When we first started dating, you know, because she's from the Nilotic people in South Sudan. Like, she's black, right? Like, you know, you see these, you know, West Africans, you're like, why do they call them black? They're actually brown. Well, when you look at the Nilotic people, you're like, oh, that's why, right? Yeah, they're black. You know, and that's where my wife is from. And, you know, when we first started dating, I went into the bank and she was sitting in the truck. And when I came out, I looked at the truck and I didn't see her. And I was like, where'd she go? You know, I thought, well, maybe she went over across the street to Tim Hortons, right, to get a cup of coffee or whatever. So I'm looking around and I kind of look because they had big windows in the Tim Hortons and I didn't see her in there. And I'm looking around and I'm like, where the hell did she go? And by this point, I'd walked to the driver's side of my truck and I was standing there holding the door handle, looking around. And I look in and she's sitting in the passenger seat. She's so black, she disappeared inside of my truck. I couldn't help but just start laughing. She's like, what's so funny? And I'm like, you vanished. You know? I'm like, you should have smiled so I could see your teeth, right? It's funny. That's funny. And, you know, one of the things, you know, I recently read, what's her name, actually? Yeah, for university, I recently read Prisons We Choose to Live Inside by Doris Lessing. And I have to admit, you know, this was a really beautiful book. And it's all about, you know, social issues and, you know, how wars come about. And it really, you know, I would really recommend it. It's a really intelligent read, you know, where she talks about the prisons we choose to live inside, how we allow ourselves to be dominated by ideas or ideology that becomes toxic. And there's something in there that she pointed out that I think is really important for everyone to realize and to meditate on. She says, one of the sure signs of a toxic cult, of a toxic ideology, is that the members of that ideology stop laughing, right? Communists, hardline communists and hardline fascists and cult leaders and radicals, they don't joke, right? You really think a comedian's going to perform for ISIS over in Iraq? No, right? Because everybody is narrowed in this little ideological box. And if you don't think in these terms, if you don't follow this line of reasoning, we'll cut your head off, right? You're anathema, exiled, off with his head, right? Toxic, man. So the sure sign of a healthy, functioning human being in a social situation is that people can joke, people can laugh. And if you find yourself in some left-wing or even right-wing political movement and people don't joke anymore, everything is serious, everybody's angry, like, look at vegans, man. How fucking angry are vegans? They just can't take a joke, and it's like all of this stuff, I promise you, okay, I guarantee it, I would be willing to bet $1 million on it, all of these ideologies will fail. They will all fail. And I always go back to the Jewish people, and the Jews, right? Well, it's true. I'm a student of biblical archaeology, and I love the Bible. I love to study the Jews. It's okay. We can talk about the Jews, right? It's fine. Like, Jewish culture is so rich and so fascinating. But, one thing that you learn when you look at their history is that they suffered a tremendous amount in the first century due to rigid ideology, right? The Pharisees and the Sadducees who lived and ruled Jerusalem in Jesus' time, they were so committed to their Jewish beliefs, so committed to the ideology of the Jewish people. And they organized a revolt against Rome. They fought against Rome. They closed the city gates. They refused to pay their taxes. They said, we reject Roman dominion. Well, in 70 AD, the Roman emperor came and massacred the city, killed everyone in it. It was one of the worst atrocities in history. And I always think about that because I think, what went wrong, right? What went wrong? Same with the Palace of Masada, right? The Jews later on, after the revolt in 70 AD, they held another revolt against the Romans, this time led by Bar Kokhba. And they put themselves up into a big palace, and a big tower on top of the Masada Hill. Again, massacred. The Romans came in, killed everyone, right? And most people did not have this experience of Rome, right? A lot of people, a lot of communities would actually ask the Romans to take them over. They would invite them in, they'd say, and I'm not trying to say the Romans were all peaches and cream. I mean, I'm studying ancient Rome right now, and those guys were dicks. But, but it's the whole idea that, the Jews suffered particularly hard because they were so committed to their ideology. They were so committed to their beliefs. And it's a tragic thing, but God didn't save them, right? God did not save them. They were massacred and slaughtered, and the Romans killed everyone. And there was no lightning bolt from heaven to rescue the people. And so, the point is you really got to be careful about what ideologies you're entertaining, right? Because if you get all zealous and you're worked up and you're like, I'm right and they're wrong and I'm going to have some higher celestial power that saves me, because I'm justified by the cosmos, this narcissistic, grandiose, inflated egoism. And you see that in a lot of these political movements, right? Where they feel themselves to be justified by some great cosmic force. They fail. They fail. The one branch of Judaism that successfully defeated the Roman Empire was, of course, Christianity, but it didn't defeat it through war or violence or hate. It defeated it through a message of love. Jesus said to the Jews, if a Roman soldier demands that you carry his gear 1 mile, carry it 2. If a Roman soldier demands your shirt, give him your tunic as well. Jews didn't want to hear that. They didn't like that message, and frankly, I don't blame them. Nobody would want to hear that message, right? When somebody comes in, invades your country, takes over everything, forces you to do things, you really want to bend over and let them take advantage of you even more? That's exactly what Jesus was telling them to do. So counterintuitive, right? So counterintuitive, so counterproductive to, Jewish freedom. Ironically, that's the message that conquered Rome. The Romans could not defeat that message. It spread like wildfire through the slave communities until pretty soon the emperor himself had Christians banging on his door, So it's a message that, we really have to be careful with these labels and this ideology. and getting zealous and all worked up. At the end of the day, I think the leftist attitudes in the 1990s had it right. Live and let live, man. Right? You know, if I got a Jew on my left and a black person on my right and an Asian person's my cousin and my best friend's a native, cool. But guess what? You also shouldn't get a gold star for your diversity. It's just being a decent human, man. Like, I don't want to be, I don't want my kids to be elevated in society just because they're black. They're 50% white. Like, what's the logic here? What's the justification, man? The solution to racism is not anti-racism, it's apathy. We have to stop giving a shit about these issues because they're not important, right? Everybody's different. Everybody's unique. Men are not the same as women. Women are not the same as men. We all have little advantages, little differences, little, discrepancies. I mean, maybe, I don't know, some people say Asian people are better at math. I think that's probably more of a product of how they're raised than anything to do with their genetics, so. But, there's, it's the point that maybe there is. Maybe there's some gene, that people from that part of the world have that make them better at math. I don't know. Right? But see, that's my point. I don't care. Right? I don't, I really, if it came out in science, that Asian people are better at math because they have a gene, I'd be like, cool, good for them, right on. That's awesome, right? But I'm not, it's not going to change. I'm not all of a sudden going to be like, oh, well, white people are crap at math. I'm not going to hire a white person just because, you know what I mean? Like, it's just silly, man. And I think that's the point, is that we really got to grow up. And, this leftist, these radical leftists who are making everything into a war and inventing all of these conflicts and, conjuring all these monsters. Yeah, racism is always going to be around in one form or another. I worked for my boss, out in Rocky, and he made a point that I have always remembered. He said, you're never going to get rid of racism completely because the human brain is wired to discern patterns. So, I always tell the story where it's like, imagine you grew up in a town where there was a sports team, right? And this sports team all wore red jerseys. And it just so happened that all the guys on this team were assholes. They all wear red jerseys and they're all dicks, right? And they beat you up, You're walking home from school, all these red jerseys appear and they beat you up, right? You may not even realize it, but years later, if you meet someone and they're wearing a red shirt with that same shade, you're automatically going to like them less. Even if you don't consciously know why. Unconsciously, you will say to yourself, I don't know why, but I don't like that guy, right? And it's because unconsciously he reminds you of the bullies you had to deal with in school. Now, that seems fair enough, right? And nobody gets bent out of shape over that. But guess what? If you got beat up by black people in school, same thing's going to be true. Right? You're going to automatically like black people less because if you were bullied in school by blacks, it's going to be wired into your brain. You're going to be instinctively, you're going to feel threatened as soon as someone of that race walks into the room. Right? That's wired into human nature. Right? We try to recognize patterns. Now, is the pattern justified? No, not really. I mean, maybe the next season the team changes their jersey color to blue, right? And maybe the next black person you meet is the nicest, kindest, sweetest human being you've ever met in your life. But unfortunately, our brains were built to adapt to their environment with trying to discern recognizable patterns and to associate feelings with those patterns, right? So you're never going to get rid of racism entirely. It all is based on human experience. And really, the only way we can truly undermine these kinds of racist tendencies is by mixing communities, allowing people to have diverse experiences, right? Allowing, white people to mix with blacks. And so you get a full spectrum of experience, right? So, if your only experience of that community has been negative, then you're automatically going to assume that all the people in that community are bad people, right? But if you make friends with a few of them, and you have diverse experiences, it'll undermine that, which to me is so significant because guess what? That means that this whole anti-racist movement is actually making the situation worse, because they're dividing themselves off. They're saying blacks on this side, whites on this side, and now the blacks are going to persecute the whites, and the whites are going to persecute the blacks, and now we're all separated and distinguished, and that's supposed to somehow fix racism. No, it's going to create it. You're going to create more racism, because now the people in that community are going to have nothing but a negative experience of the people on the other side, and you perpetuate it. So these anti-racists are actually creating racism. They're manufacturing it, right? Real anti-racism is apathy. Yeah, come on in, man. Whatever, bro. You know, blacks, whites. You know, you shouldn't even say it. Shouldn't even say it out loud. Come on in, bro. I don't care what you are. Are you chill? Are you cool? Are you decent? Come on in. Let's hang out, right? That's the way it should be, right? The fact that I think that we should make it socially awkward to even talk about racism, that if somebody even brings up the word, we should avoid them, you know, because it's like, stop talking about it. Stop making it an issue, because by making it an issue, you actually perpetuate it, right? The only way that we can really get past this is by putting it in the past and saying, we don't do that anymore. So whether somebody's speaking as a racist or an anti-racist, we should ostracize them equally, right? Because we're done, man. We're done with this crap. It's over, right? Let's move on. Let's move on with our lives. There are bigger fish to fry. We've got environmental problems and Russia invading Ukraine, and, you know, the Chinese want to take over Taiwan. We got bigger fish to fry, bro. There are bigger issues to deal with than whether or not John has brown skin. Like, give me a break. You know, it's so stupid. Like, you know, I don't get it, man. I don't get it. I just think that, you know, all these efforts that people are making are counterproductive. And if we keep talking about it and worrying about it and making a big deal out of it and refusing to joke about it, we're actually going to make it worse. We should joke about it. We should laugh about it. It's okay. I lost my wife in my truck. She's so black. She disappeared. It's okay. She's my wife. I love her. We have 3 kids now. Well, 2 kids and a 3rd one on the way, right? So, I don't get it, man. I just don't get it. And I really think that it's important that people out there refuse to take part in this anymore. Just refuse. You know, it's enough, man. No more. No more of this stuff. I'm not taking part in it. I'm not labeling people. I don't care if you're black, white, straight, gay, cisgender. Pff, who cares, man? And all this complicate again with the labels, you know, with these genders. Oh, I'm a wolfarian. I'm this. Give me a break, man. You know, these labels. You know, I guess we don't have enough of them, right? We don't have enough labels, so we got to invent more, right? And to me, that's the whole issue. Isn't that really what it's all about? Imagine if the word black and Negro and all this stuff was just eliminated from the English language. You know, there were no more terms that we could use to distinguish ourselves, right? A lot of these problems would go away. I don't like that guy over there. He's I don't know. It's like his appearance is is different. You can't perpetuate hate without a label, right? You can't do it. You need the labels. You need to be able to say, that guy, I don't like him because he belongs to this group, right? And now, you know, these leftists, instead of getting rid of the labels, they're making up more. You know? And it's like, that's what caused all this in the first place. Like, you guys are actually creating the very situation that leads to racism and bigotry and persecution. Like, you know, as far as the transgender issues go, again, I don't care. Like, I really don't care. It's like, I think it's crazy, but of course I think it's crazy because I'm not in that situation. And maybe if I was in that situation, I would feel differently, but I'm not in that situation. So it seems crazy to me. So if a person comes into my life who's clearly transgender, I'm not going to lie to you, they're going to make me uncomfortable. They're going to make me feel awkward, especially in this political climate, because now it's like, oh my God, if I interact with this human being, they're filled with so much ideology and so many labels in their head. It's like no matter what I say, they're just waiting to pigeonhole me into one of these negative groups that they can hate, you know? It's like, you don't want to be around those people. They make you uncomfortable. It's like, oh my God, whatever I say is going to be wrong because you've got so much crap in your head, you know? And this again comes down to not being able to joke, not being able to laugh. You can always tell people who are gone off the deep end because they can't take a joke, you know? So I think that, you know, the trans people and all this, you better relax. I mean, because you're in a weird situation, and granted, it's not ideal, but like hating people and persecuting people and labeling people and justifying all this stuff is not going to make your situation better, right? Cisgender, straight, white, you know, all this stuff. That's just going to make those people want to avoid you because they're going to be like, you automatically hate me for who I am. Like, you don't even know me. You don't even know anything about me. Like, but you hate me because I belong to this group. So you're actually a racist, right? You're a racist. And you hate me because I belong to this group without knowing anything about me as an individual. That's racism, right? So I think, you know, like with the transgender issue, again, live and let live. You know what? If you want to change your gender, if you're a man, you want to be a woman, like I'll openly say you're going to have some issues. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be weird. People are going to have weird reactions. It's just the way it is. You know, I would be awkward around it a little bit. I'd be like, I don't know. You know, this just makes me feel weird. You know, so that's what you're up against. But I mean, if that's what you want, that's what you want. Then do it. Live and let live, man. If that's the life you want to live, do it. I don't see why we should, you know, be telling people how to live their lives, one way or the other. So yeah, that's my rant. I just, I wanted to, yeah, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee now. So, yeah, just everybody take it easy.